Hello, third grade, and welcome to lesson 13-4. This lesson's titled Use Models to Compare Fractions, and we're going to focus on fractions that have the same numerator. So last lesson, we talked about fractions that have the same denominator, the same number of equal parts. This one has the same numerator. We have the same number of parts, but the parts are going to be different sizes. So our denominators, our bottom numbers, are going to be different from each other. Let's take a look at our video, and then we'll hop into our notes and guided practice and be able to explain this even more.
How can you compare fractions with the same numerator? Claire bought 2 scarves as souvenirs from her visit to a Florida university. The scarves are the same size. One scarf is 5/6 orange, and the other scarf is 5/8 orange. Which is greater, 5/6 or 5/8? What do the fractions 5/6 and 5/8 have in common?
Select your answer.
So here we can see that what the thing that's the same about them is they have the same top number or the same numerator.
You can compare fractions that have the same numerator by reasoning about their size. Use fraction strips to reason about the size of 5/6 compared to the size of 5/8.
So let's take a look here. Now our one whole is shown on top. Underneath it, we have the 1/6 size pieces. So here we have 5 of them. So if we had one more, we would have the whole. So 5 of my 6 or 5/6 is going to be almost my whole, but 5 of my 8 is farther from my whole because we would need 3 more pieces to make it a whole. And since we have a fraction here that has a larger denominator, 8 is bigger than 6, that means we're cutting our whole into a greater number of pieces. So those pieces are going to be smaller.
There are 5/6. There are 5/8. The parts are different sizes. The greater the denominator, the smaller each part will be. 5/6 is greater than 5/8. If 2 fractions have the same numerator, the fraction with the lesser denominator is the greater fraction.
Okay, let's go ahead and get into our notes and our guided practice now. Now, our notes for this lesson, we're going to focus on the question, how can you compare fractions with the same numerator? Now, one thing that's very important that I want you to remember, which is why I put this in bright red, you have to remember that the denominator tells you how many parts your whole is divided into. So the bigger your denominator, the smaller those parts are going to be. This is because you're going to be sharing it with more people. So think of it like a cake. The more pieces you have to cut your cake into, the smaller those pieces are going to be because you're having to share it with a greater number of people. So let's take a look at my fraction strip here. So I picked 2 easy numbers that are far from each other, so it's easy for you guys to see. So I drew out my one whole. Now here I have a fraction that has, both of these fractions have a numerator of 1. So 1/2 and 1/8. These are both unit fractions. Remember, a unit fraction has a 1 in the numerator, and it doesn't matter what's in the denominator. Now I drew these out using fraction strips. 1/2 means my whole is broken into 2 equal parts, and I have one of those parts. 1/8 says my whole is broken into 8 equal parts, and I have one of those parts. So if I am thinking about this even like an apple, if I'm going to take an apple and cut it in half into 2 equal parts, those parts are going to be really big. But if I have to cut my apple into 8 slices instead of just 2 slices, those 1/8 size pieces are going to be a lot smaller. So the bigger your denominator, the more you have to cut it, the more you have to cut your whole. So that means those pieces are going to get tinier. Let's take a look at our example question. It says Krista, Jamal, and Raphael each had 1 serving of vegetables. Krista ate 2/6 of her vegetables, Jamal ate 2/3 of his vegetables, and Raphael ate 2/8 of his vegetables. Arrange the fractions in order from the greatest amount of vegetables, or from the least amount of vegetables to the greatest, to figure out who ate the least and who ate the most. So first we want to stop and think. I know that a large denominator means smaller size parts because there's more of them, there's more parts. I also know that the fractions all have the same numerator, so my top number is all the same. I have 2 parts of however many my whole is. Now Raphael's part has the largest denominator. It has a denominator of 8. Krista's had the second largest denominator, and that was a 6, and Jamal's part had the smallest denominator, which was a 3. So I'm going to put these in order from smallest size pieces to biggest size pieces. So I know this is a little bit backwards when you look at it. Usually you think 8 is really big, but 8 just means you're cutting it into a bigger amount or a larger number of pieces. So if you have 2 out of 8 pieces, those pieces are going to be a lot smaller if you had only cut your whole into 3 pieces and you had 2 of them. So 2/8 is going to be your smallest, 2/6 is going to be in the middle, and 2/3 is going to be the largest. So Raphael ate the least. He ate 2/8 of his vegetables, and Jamal ate the most. He ate 2/3 of his vegetables. Now I drew these out for Raphael, Krista, and Jamal. So here I have my whole. Each of my wholes are the same total size. So his I cut into 8 pieces and I colored in 2 of those pieces. For Krista's, I cut it into 6 pieces and colored in 2 of her pieces. And then Jamal, I cut it into 3 pieces and colored in 2 of his pieces. So you can see when you have to make more cuts, so you have a larger denominator, those pieces are going to get smaller and smaller. When you have to make just a few cuts, your pieces are going to be quite large. All right, let's take a look at another example. It says draw fraction strips and compare the fractions. So I have 4/4 and I have 4/6. Both of these have a denominator or a numerator of 4, and their denominators are different. That means the size of those pieces are going to be different. Now, if I'm using fraction strips, I'm going to draw it out. So here's my 1 whole for reference. 4/4 means I have all 4 pieces that I need to make the whole. And 4/6 means I have 4 out of the 6 total pieces I would need to make a whole. Now, because 6 is greater than 4, that means I have a greater number of pieces that I need to make it whole. So remember, when the numerators are the same, the numerator and the denominator are the same number, they equal 1 whole. So the 4/4 is 1 whole. But when the numerator is smaller than the denominator, it shows less than 1 whole. So this one, right away, you know that this is going to be less than 1 and this is going to be equal to 1. For the next one, we have 2/6, and we're comparing that to 2/3. So I drew my 1 whole fraction strip for reference, and then I drew 2 1/6 size pieces and 2 1/3 size pieces. Now here, if we have a total of 3 that we need to make it whole, and we have 2 of those 3, that means we have most of them. But here, if we have a total of 6 pieces to make it whole and we only have 2 of them, we have less than half. We have a very small piece. So when your denominator is big, that means it's divided into more pieces. When your denominator is small, that means it's broken into less pieces. So those pieces are larger. Let's take a look at our guided practice. Number 1 says, how can fraction strips help you reason about whether 4/6 or 4/8 of the same whole is greater? So fraction strips help to show the size of those fraction parts, and they help me to see right away that 4/6 is greater than 4/8 because they take up a larger amount of my whole than 4/8. Number 2, which is greater, 1/4 or 1/6? Complete the diagram and answer the question. So here's my 1 whole, here's my 1/4 size piece, and here's my 1/6 size piece. So here I can see right away that my 1/4 is larger than my 1/6. Now for numbers 3 and 4, we're also doing comparisons, and they have the fraction strips drawn out in your book for you, so I didn't draw them here. 3 out of my 6 pieces, or 3 out of my 3 total pieces. Now remember, when your numerator and denominator are the same, that means you have the whole. When your numerator is smaller than your denominator, you have less than one whole. So 3 out of 6 pieces, that's just half of my whole. 3 out of 3 pieces, that's my whole. So 3/6 is less than 3/3. Again, here we have 4/6 and 4/8, and we talked about this higher up. We know that 4/6 is greater than 4/8 because the smaller my denominator, the bigger those pieces are. So if I have the same number of pieces, my 1/6 size pieces are going to be larger than my 1/8 size pieces. All right, that takes us to the end of this lesson. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.